Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the final Grade 3 and 4 theory quiz of the year. I hope you've all had a great time doing these. We certainly have had a fun time recording them. And if you want to challenge yourself, feel free to look at the playlists on YouTube and do all the other quizzes you might have missed. But this one is something a little bit different for this week. We're looking at orchestral scores. So we talk quite a lot about different instruments in the orchestra, but we very rarely see an orchestral score, and they look quite different. So we're going to go through all the different sections. So here is a page from a massive orchestral score. So they're not normally quite this big, but it has everything on it. So this is called a score in C. So everything that I would be transposing is actually, it's written how it would actually sound. So you can play all these parts on the piano and it will sound how it's supposed to. So that's why there's no different key signatures. So normally when you have a transposing instrument, they have a different key to all the others, but here they're all in C major. So it's very easy for us to just play what we can see. So let's look at the first section.
Okay, so at the very top of the page, we have the woodwind section. The woodwind section is nearly always written at the top of the orchestral score, always in this order. So flutes are very nearly always at the top. Some other woodwind instruments that we have here, the piccolo, we have oboes, we have two different kinds of clarinets, one in E flat, one in B flat. We have a saxophone, and the interesting thing about the saxophone is it's not often included in the woodwind section of an orchestra. It's sort of unusual. But then we've got the bassoon and the contrabassoon, which are more common orchestral instruments. There are also some instruments that aren't used in this score, but are equally valid as woodwind instruments in an orchestra. So the bass clarinet is one of them, the cor anglais, and there are also some links between some of these instruments. So, for example, the flute and the piccolo are very closely related. The bassoon and the contrabassoon are. Obviously, all the clarinets are related, and the oboe and the cor anglais are both very closely related. So
the next section down is always the brass. So here we have the French horns right to the top, and there's always 4 French horns, as there's 2 per stave. Then we have trumpets and trombones. We have trumpets in B flat and trombones and a tuba. Now sometimes the tuba is played by a bass trombone, and so those 2 instruments can be swapped around. So in this case we have a tuba on this score, but it could be a bass trombone, and these are normally quite loud.
And next we have the percussion section. Now this is probably the most exciting section because there are so many possibilities. And so timpani is one that very often comes up, and that's abbreviated to timp. Here we've also got xylophone and tambourine. But as I said, there are plenty of other possibilities. So we can have things like drums, so a side drum, a tenor drum, the triangle, which I'm sure we all know about, castanets, depending on whether it's appropriate for the style. We can have cymbals, bass drum, gong, glockenspiel, woodblock, slapsticks, anvil. We can have a tam-tam. Honestly, there are so many different kinds of percussion instrument. Remember, the definition of percussion instruments is something that, you strike or you hit. But yeah, that's sort of in the middle of the page, underneath the brass.
So next we have the choir. Now this is quite unusual in an orchestral score, but when it is used, it is here right in the middle. So it's normally underneath the percussion section, right? So, and you would only see your part, the 4 singing parts. So here we got soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, just how you'd expect them to be laid out. So this is where your part would be when the conductor is looking at a big score, like in the St. John Passion or Messiah. Your part would look right here.
Next, we have the keyboards. And so here we have things like the harp. So here we've got 2 harps, harp 1 and harp 2. And we've also got a piano, which can be used as an orchestral instrument. Some other instruments that we can have that fall into the keyboard category. Sometimes we have organ included in big orchestral works, and also celesta. But they go here, underneath the choir or the percussion.
And the final section is the strings. So here we have all the abbreviations. We have VCL for cello, because cello is short for violoncello. So quite a lot of these abbreviations come from the Italian or the German terms for the instruments, which is why they don't always look completely right. So in a normal kind of a standard orchestral score, we'd have your woodwind, brass, percussion, and then your strings. So the choir and the keyboard instruments are add-ins for this massive score. So, but strings are always at the bottom with the double bass at the very, very bottom of the texture.
So we've gone through it. Now it's time for some questions. Okay, so question number 1. How many of the instruments that you've just seen on that page transpose? So feel free to rewind the video and go back and look at each section individually. But remember, when we have transposing instruments, the note they sound is different to what you see on the page in a score in C. And remember that the interval between those two notes can be anything. Yeah, notes can transpose in any interval. So,
question 2, what does subito mean? So this is actually on the score, but think about the Italian term subito.
question number 3, what does 8VA mean? And here, I mean, we have this square bracket thing that goes over the top and tells us all of the music that term applies to. And so we see it in the flute and the piano and the violin 1 in this extract. What does 8VA mean?
So what clef does the top trombone part change to in the 5th bar? So I've given you a zoomed in portion of the score here. So try and find the trombone section. There's only one instrument that actually changes clef. And it should be one you know. So look out for a strange clef change. So Mr. Morrell is circling the correct part to be looking at.
Yeah, TBNS, trombones. So question number 5, same little bit of music here. Is this a true or false question? The soprano and alto and the tenor and bass parts are singing in octaves respectively in bars 1 to 5 of this. So here we're thinking about the different parts in groups of 2. So are these parts singing in octaves? I'll just show you. We're talking around about here.
Question 6, how many octaves apart are the 2 hands in the piano? So this helps if you know what that 8VA sign means, a bit of a hint. But how many octaves apart are the hands?
Question number 7. What does the line through the stem of the note in the string parts here mean? So it's quite small, you've got to look quite closely, but in all of these string parts, we've got a tiny little line here that goes through the stem of the note, and it means something quite specific. Question
8, what does a line above a note mean? So there's one example here in the tuba part in the 4th bar, so there's a line above a note. It has a special Italian name, but it means something very specific to do with how you play that note or sing that note.
Question number 9, what might this double slash thing mean in the 2nd B flat clarinet part? So B flat clarinet here. So in the 2nd part of that little group, what does that double slash symbol mean?
And question 10, who composed this piece? And I've given you a few hints. It's English and alive in the 20th century, and you have sung a few of his pieces, not this one, but a few of them, including a Jubilate for 2 choirs and organ, and the 12. Now, if you're listening to last week's quizzes, you might be able to remember. So now for the answers.
There we go. So question number 1. So it was how many of the instruments on that page of music? And how many of them did transpose? Well, there are lots of them transpose. There are 7 things you could have put. And so we've got things like E flat clarinet, B flat clarinet, French horn in F, trumpet in B flat. And those ones are quite easy because the note that the transposing interval is actually given in the part name. But there are some other instruments that transpose that aren't quite so obvious. So like the piccolo actually sounds an octave higher than it's written, and the double bass sounds an octave lower than it's written, and the saxophone in E flat here, which wasn't actually written on the score, I don't think, but it transposes nonetheless.
Question 2, what does subito mean? It means suddenly, and it quite often happens before a dynamic marking. So subito piano is a really suddenly quiet section for a dramatic effect.
So question number 3, 8VA. This can also sometimes be used for dramatic effect. But it means play the octave above, because obviously the number 8 is referring to the octave there. But if we have a passage that suddenly goes really, really high, and here you can see the instruments that tends to apply to. So flutes often do that kind of thing. Piano as well, and violin, they're quite effective when they play above, an octave above.
Question 4, what clef to the top trombone part has changed in the 5th bar? Well, it's right there in the middle. It changes to the tenor clef. So it starts, and the trombone quite often moves between the bass and the tenor clef. So if you play the trombone, you're quite likely to learn in both clefs.
So question number 5 is true or false. This is true. So you can see here that the sopranos and the tenors are both singing this exactly the same part, starting on an F, but just in different octaves, because obviously the tenors can't quite sing as high as the sopranos, and exactly the same for the altos and basses. So that's quite a common feature to treat the parts in those pairs. So grouping the sopranos with the tenors, making them sing the same kind of thing, and the altos with the basses. So that was true.
And question 6, how many octaves apart are the 2 hands of the piano? Well, because we have this octave above symbol in the right hand, they're actually 2 octaves apart.
Question number 7, what does this line through the stem of the notes in the string parts mean? It means tremolo, okay? And tremolo means you're sort of rolling the sound. You're staying on the same note, but you have this sort of vibrating, pulsating effect. And it's just a shorthand way of writing that.
And question 8, what does a line above a note mean? It's a tenuto mark, so it means kind of held, you kind of enforce it. So not as heavily as an accent, but with a bit of more force and placement.
Question number 9, what does this double slash mean in the second B flat clarinet part? So that was here, you see where the red dot is? It means you repeat the previous bar. So here, it means we've actually got to repeat the bar that was on the previous page. But we quite often see it in orchestral parts more than we do in, say, choral and organ music.
And question 10, who composed this piece? So English, 20th century, Eastern a few of his works. It is William Walton. So this piece is called Belshazzar's Feast. It's a story in the Old Testament. It's quite an interesting story. It's got floating hands writing things on the wall and lots of things happening and a massive, massive party. And our heroes eventually win, which is always a good thing. So if you want to listen to it, I would suggest you do. It's quite a long piece. It's only a very, very short snippet of the score, but it's a massive orchestra. And at the end, Walton actually adds 2 brass bands and an organ to that already massive score. So it's a really epic piece.
Very cool.
Yeah. And so that is the end of the quiz. So this is the very last quiz you'll ever have for grade 3 and 4, and the last quiz from me. So have a lovely summer and have fun in September. You can all meet again. So bye, Mr. Morrell.
Bye, Miss Morgan. Till the next time.